Hello, I'm Steph from My Driver Classic, and many of you tuned in for the Mondeo video a few weeks ago, and there were a lot of emails that asked me to do more modern cars and said, can you have a look at some of the other stuff from the 1990s? And anyway, I've been talking to Nick for several years about getting his lovely Alfa 155 1.8 8-valve on the channel. Now this is really special because it's believed to be the only 1.8 8-valve still on the road in the UK today, which makes it such a privilege to be taking it out and sharing it with you. As you'll be able to see at first glance, it is alarmingly original. It's a beautiful example and we're so very lucky to be taking it out. In today's video, I'm going to show you around the car, show you why it gave the C-Class a run for its money, and it was the choice of many people, even though many Alfa aficionados said it's not a real Alfa now, it's front wheel drive, but more on that later. Anyway, plenty to cover off. It's an exciting car, and more importantly than that, it's one that you don't see every day. So we're going to dig deep into the heart of it and discover just why Nick is so very passionate about this beautiful car from 1993. So buckle up, we're off to discover the Alfa 155.
The Alfa 155 was launched to an eager audience in 1992 at the Geneva Motor Show. The car was coming in to replace the 75 and was a front-wheel drive model which packed in modernity and a design which gave a keen coefficient drag and really looked sleek and looks timeless, I think, even in the 2020s. The 155 wasn't all Alfa though, and some diehards will really talk to you about this because the car is developed on the parent company, which by the way is Fiat, tried and tested, is it Tipo Tre, I'm rubbish with Italian by the way, platform. Essentially this translates in English as the Type 3 platform, and it's a front wheel drive platform which you see used across Alfa, Fiat, Lancia in the 80s and 90s. There was however a four-wheel drive model available at the time, but it's not just known as the 155, it's known as the 155 Q4, and it's fitted with a 2-litre turbocharged engine, so it's a pretty big deal if you've got one of those at your fingertips. However, despite the modern looks and the step into something I think more modern with that front wheel drive, the response of the buying public and journalists of the time is, well, it's tepid. And there's a few reasons for this, but one of the biggies was this. Fiat had acquired Alfa post-design of the 75, which really then makes the 75 the last car designed fully independently of any Fiat input. And therefore, your Alfa diehards immediately look at the 155 from the off and they're like, it's not really an Alfa for us, it feels like there's something missing. And so there's already that little bit of a stigma around it, and then they see that it's then front wheel drive and they are devastated because they love the rear wheel drive setup. But that's progress, and that's where so many manufacturers were going at the time. However, despite all these grumbles and people dragging their heels, it then does really well in motorsport. So the grumbles quieten down somewhat. And then Alfa come in 1995, and they create the 1995 facelift, which gives the car a wider front and rear track, an enhanced steering rack which reduces it down to 2.2 turns lock to lock and just gives it an overall slightly sexier, edgier, racier look. Now it is important to note that this car wasn't a flop, because a lot of people might say, oh, well, if it wasn't, it wasn't a real Alfa or whatever, blah blah blah. No, because despite us seeing really, well, have you seen one of these on the roads in recent times? I certainly haven't. A cross-production run which ran from 1992 to 1998, Alfa shipped just over 195,000 of these cars across all the specs. I give you more geeky detail later on the 1.8 engine we've got in the car, the trim, the space allocation, but essentially you're getting 0 to 60 in just over 10 seconds and a top speed of 124 miles per hour. So look, it's not hanging around, even compared to some of today's humdrum motors, and in my opinion, this looks a lot cooler than they are, even if we are slightly lagging drag gear off the lights. Now the car was replaced by the Alfa Romeo 156, and that comes in 1998. Again, it's another car that you just don't see anymore. And these Alfa 155s are fast growing in popularity with collectors who remember them and lusted after them when they were new, and maybe they couldn't afford one, or they'd secretly hoped that their mum or dad were going to bring one home. And as well as that, the younger classic fanatics, through events like Festival of the Unexceptional, they see stuff like this and they say, that is really cool. And they want something retro with staying power and mod cons that they can drive but stand out from the crowd. This ticks that box perfectly. As I've said before, and I'll say it again, it might not be everybody's styling cup of tea, and sometimes it isn't always mine in terms of this era, but 90s motoring really is.
Coming inside, I want to talk to you first of all about this car's history because I think it's really interesting. So this car was never intended, first of all, for a loving family home. It was actually the dealership's car that they used for customers to borrow to get from A to B when their own car was in for work. Because a lot of people are going to ask me about those black bumpers front and rear. Because it was just the customer runaround, they thought, well, customers are probably going to ding it. So they just left the bumpers as is. However, what I find really interesting about this is that despite the fact that it's a customer runaround, they've still thought commercially, because they've thought, well, if you've got someone whose car is approaching end of life or coming to the end, people with those knackered, maybe even like the 75s that have been absolutely ragged to death, or even Fiats, they were looking at lots of different things. They were looking at so many different people and thinking, this might be the car that gets you into one of the new Alfas. And so what they do is they essentially mid-spec this, so it's not right at the top, it's that nice comfortable mid-range space. And I should probably say as well is that this is the one that many people say to go for if you are not able to go for top of the range, because if you go for the 8 valve on the 1.8, it's chain driven rather than belt driven, and so therefore it's seen as the safer option. Anyway, I've gone wildly off on a buying guide tangent there, but the couple of things that point out to us that it is mid-range and it's not totally at the bottom budget end is we've got the sunroof up here, we've got the rear headrests, and we've also got the radio. And that's something I love about this car, is it has the original radio. So many people are so willing to rip these things out and put CD players in or a more modern system, and yet what I love about this is despite the fact it's been now through a few owners, I think 3 or 4, it's still got that original headset. These are the details that are so important. But what else have we got in here? Well, more than I thought. And also I should probably give a shout out to these seats because they are so comfortable. Now, of course, they were going after the C-Class customer. They were going after people that were maybe look at a Mondeo and think, maybe that's the car for me. So they wanted to produce a car that was quality and that would pick off some of those buyers from other car markets. And they are really nicely trimmed, they're really comfortable. I don't know if you can see that on the video at home, but they sort of dip in and they hug you, and they're really comfy. They're much nicer than I was expecting. And that is actually what I would say about this car, is it's much classier and much more well appointed than I thought it would be, which is a terrible thing to say, I'm sure. Anyway, one of the first things I'm going to show you is the great use of space in this car. Now, the glove box inside here is sectioned out into different bits. I love that. It means that you can put your cassette tape somewhere, your paperwork, your travel suites. You have got space for everything. And I should also probably give a shout out to that boot space that you saw earlier. There are 525 litres of space inside there, which is such good going when you look at the size of the car and you think, there's probably not going to be much space in there. Now, the other thing that I will say about this car is it has been trimmed very, very well, because all the materials, and it's on 73k now, have all held up remarkably well. The dash isn't cracked, and by the way, as you can see there with the dash, it's again all sectioned out. I really like that. Love the little toy, by the way, of the, how do I pronounce that? Is it Carabinieri? Somebody that speaks Italian, please correct me on how I say that. But they use these 155s And that is a little representative, and on that it's got the original wheels that this should have, but the wheels have been updated on this. It's like one of the only things that's been changed. Now you've got your air vent up here, you come down into vents again, and then you've got these controls. Now I am going to give a big thumbs up to Alfa here, because the plastic that they've used in these high traffic areas is so good. Now it's 73,000, so it's not brand new. And yet somehow these plastics still look remarkable. They haven't chipped, they haven't degraded with all the sunlight on. 10 out of 10 for that. Now, one of the things that has been slightly tweaked, but is the same as it would have been when it was new, is this LCD display for the clock. Now this has been replaced because it died, but again it's been looked after and it's been replaced. And thumbs up to the owner, Nick, because you know, trying to find stuff like that isn't easy. He sourced that from Lithuania. I mean, blimey, I love when you talk to people with cars and they go the extra length and they keep them on the road and they keep them looking tip top. Coming across from that, you've got this little display panel. Now, if you've gone for top of the range, you start getting, for the moment, you just get this little warning here that tells you which door is open. But if you go for top of the range, you get a selection of warning lights that warn you about other things like bulbs being out. But we don't want extra worry. We're here to enjoy the drive. Coming down from there, you've got this neat little cubby hole here, so you've got your ashtray and you've got your cigar lighter. Now the one criticism I will say on this is that I watched Nick struggle trying to get this back in earlier. So if you were a smoker and you were using that ashtray, you would really struggle to get that back in, so you might want to just open the window. Coming down from there, as I've waxed lyrical already, you've got the cassette radio there and you've got a little space for some cassettes. Coming in front of us here, we've got a selection of gauges, and so you've got a lovely simple display. And I love this because this is the great thing about 90s motoring, which makes it a golden age, I think, is that you get everything that you need for a modern driving experience in terms of all the warnings you need, but you haven't got so much there that your space is cluttered, that you're distracted when you're trying to drive, and you can enjoy the driving experience whilst being kept informed of what's going on. So running from left through to right, you've got your oil temperature and you've got your water temperature, you've got your speedo, and your top speed on this I think is around 124 miles per hour. You've got your rev counter, you've got your oil pressure, and you've got your fuel gauge there as well. Now I need to talk to you about something, because one of the questions I always ask people is, what kind of MPG are you getting out of the car? I'm probably going to shock you. This is getting 42 miles per gallon on a long run. Now for me, that makes it a really attractive prospect, and it probably also explains why Nick is using this daily. Yep, he's using it daily. He drove 2 hours here today and didn't even break out in a sweat, even though it is quite hot. Coming down from there, you've got your controls. So on the left you've got your indicator and you've got your lights, and on the right hand side you've got your wipers. Again, golden age of motoring, you get several speeds on those. And you've also got an aftermarket cup holder, which did have a bottle of water in, because apparently a lot of people feel very passionately about not drinking in these cars. But look, it is a hot day and you do need some water. Coming down from there, you've got your headlight adjustment switch and you have got your bonnet pull. Now, one of the things I really like about this car is that when they've designed it, they have thought about some of the beautiful details, including these pedal rubbers, which have the Alfa design on. Now you might say to me, Steph, that is the least I would expect. But look, you don't always get that when you go for a car that is from the past. Quite often you just get plain rubber covers. And you've also got, when I open the door, your Alfa detailing, if you can see that there. Again, it's these little things. Also, these doors shut really nicely and they've got a bit of weight to them, because sometimes you get in 90s stuff and it feels a bit tinny. 80s and 70s stuff is the same actually. Coming over, you've also got electric windows, and that is pretty much all of your controls up here. Coming across to here, you've got your fog lights, you've got a coin holder, and this space, you might be wondering why they've not used this space. Well, the reason they haven't is because if you go up into the next bracket of bells and whistles, you start getting things like the electric windows for the back area as well. But of course we don't have that on this, so you've just got this plain space. Now you have got your sunroof, and in front of your sunroof, remember your sunroof is something that you don't get as standard. You do have to pay extra for that, but remember this is a mid-range example. You've got this blanking plate here. Now if you're wondering what is under this, and it's not just a blanking plate, so if your controls fail for this, you can actually wind this, as you can see, with a key. Now apparently this isn't something that goes wrong on a regular basis, but it's good to know it's there. It's good to know you've got these things. Now, usually I don't talk about the back of a car, but I want to give a nod to this today because I think the back area of this is so well designed, and look how much space we have. I can't believe how much legroom we've got in the back, and Nick was telling me, because he's out on the road quite often in this car, and of course he's working from a laptop, and he said he sits in the back on Zoom because it's got as much space as he needs, and he's sitting in the comfort of his own car. But because he's got all that space and he's got the armrest, he doesn't need to worry about popping into an expensive coffee shop. So all good stuff. Now another detail that we should probably point out is you can remove that armrest as well. So if you've got big things that you need to try and jimmy into the back, you can jimmy those into the back as well. So you've got so much room, and the use of space inside here can be summed up with one word: ingenious. Because when you look at the car from the outside, I don't think it gives a true indication of how much space you're going to get when you get inside. Now I know that safety regulations have changed and all the rest of it, but you can look at some absolute hulking beasts on the road nowadays, and you do not have as much space inside those as you have inside here. And as well, I really like the fact that the doors open really wide. And I want to point this out because sometimes people watch these videos and I know that they struggle with things like walking sticks, or perhaps their mobility isn't what it once was, and they struggle and they think that there isn't a classic car for them. This might be the classic car for you because the doors open so wide and the back as well. So like, I look at my own car and it doesn't open this wide. It's great. It would mean that if you were trying to navigate a child seat out the back, or you're trying to navigate a wheelchair or walking aids, I reckon you'll get it in. So if you take out a relative perhaps, or a partner who is disabled, you would be able to get all their stuff in and out the back of here, and I reckon you could probably get a wheelchair or a buggy in the back as well. So awfully practical, and perhaps slightly boring for some people to point that out, but also perhaps a bit of a light bulb moment for some people that are watching and thinking that classic cars were out of their remit because they wouldn't be able to use them practically. I reckon this might be the one for you. Now we've waxed lyrical about talking about it. We've got that 1.8 engine, which by the way is 127 brake horsepower. We go from 0 to 62 in 10.3 seconds, but what does it sound like? Well, just check them in neutral and I'll get it started up for you. Give it a little rev. Now I don't know if you can hear this at home, but sometimes when you start cars from this era, you immediately know there's going to be a rattle, because even when it's idling at like 1,000 RPM, you can hear like, and you think, oh, that is going to be horrendous on the drive. Touch wood, I can't hear anything rattling yet, but let's have a listen from the back, get out on the open road and see if it passes the rattle test. Okay. Right, let's go on an adventure. I cannot stress to you how exciting this car is. It's got so much get up and go, it's really torquey. And the nicest thing about it is your foot barely brushes the pedal and it's off, which did make sitting in a 30 zone mildly stressful. So what I've done instead is I've decided to bring you out to the 50 bit so that I can perhaps put my foot down. Hold on, let's see if I can do it now. Let's bring us up to 50. Also, you know I said to you, we'll see if it rattles when we get going. It doesn't rattle at all. And it's so quiet inside. I can't believe how quiet this is. I've been out in cars that are 10 years old that are louder inside than this is. It's remarkable. I can't believe how quiet it is. There's no knocks, there's no bangs, there's no rattles. We're going over some horrendous potholes and yet absolutely nothing. It's taking it all in its stride. This is one of the most beautiful 90s vehicles I've ever taken out. So look, we're going to come up to 50. Again, barely tickling that pedal and straight up at nearly 50. And that's the other thing I'll say as well, is that as you drive, the speedo is just so wonderfully precise. It doesn't move, it's just absolutely on the money. It's lovely. Now I'm wondering if I can just... I was trying to think, where's that wind noise coming from? I thought it was that window, but of course it's the sunroof. But it's so quiet inside, and this handling is so light, it's so responsive. I can't believe, and I cannot get over how modern this feels. It's incredible. Now, of course, I realised that this was relatively new in 1993. It came to the car show, didn't it, in 1992, as I was saying earlier. But even so, there are other cars that I've tested that have come out later on in the 90s and in the early 2000s that I've driven that haven't felt as advanced as this. This really is a wolf in sheep's clothing. I did not expect it to feel like it does. I can see exactly why Nick is so devoted to this car. He was saying to me, you know, it's just everything you could hope for, and when you come out inside it you see why. It's got the right ingredients, light and responsive steering, but not too light, so you still feel like you're in control of the car. It's incredibly responsive. As soon as you put your foot down, you're not having to thrash it to get it to do basic speeds. And I reckon that if you took it on a motorway, you wouldn't have any problems there either. So that's lovely. Again, it's just these seats, and I talked about them earlier, but they are so comfy. So you get into it and you can see why Nick's using it every day, because it has everything that you need in a daily driver. And we had a conversation before we filmed, and Nick felt very passionately and wanted to point out as well, he said, why do I need something more modern when this does everything I need a modern car to do? And he's so right, because this is that lovely sweet spot. It's small enough to get into a parking space without you having to sweat or rely on parking sensors and those little screens there. It's got so much space inside that whether you're the driver, the passenger front or rear, you've got plenty of space and you don't feel cramped up or claustrophobic. It keeps up with modern traffic without having to be thrashed. The steering is just as lovely as any modern car, and it could give it a run for its money. And you've got all the controls there that you could possibly need. So really, I ask you, what more could you want from a classic car? And you know what as well? It doesn't look like anything else in the car park. And I think for me, that gives it a real magic edge as well. So as I said earlier, there might be Alfa aficionados out there that say, oh, it's not a real Alfa, oh, you know, it's front wheel drive, and oh, it happened after this, it happened after that. But you know what? Whether you think it's a real Alfa or not, it's a very special car, and it really has the same magic, I think, today that it would have had in 1993. And I reckon there were plenty of people that borrowed this when their car was in the doldrums and it needed something doing, and thought, maybe it's finally time that I part X'd my old car and I invested in my very own 155. Because you know what? I think if I borrowed it and my own car was in for work, I'm not entirely sure that I would have walked away and thought, I don't need a 155. This has been a really great experience. I hope you've enjoyed it. I'm going to sadly have to give the keys back now, but I know that at least I'm giving the keys back to somebody who loves it, cherishes it, and will make sure it stays on the road for many years to come. And I should probably say as well that if you are watching this video and you are thinking about buying one, I would recommend joining the very friendly Alfa Romeo Owners Club, who I've been reliably informed are not only incredibly friendly and sociable, but are very helpful as well for finding parts, help and cars. So that's it from me today. Let me know what you've thought of this. If you'd had a choice, would you have bought a C-Class, would you have bought this, or would you have bought a Mondeo? Until next time, take care and drive safely.